Hey,
Hi. Sorry about that.
yeah, no problem, no problem. Actually, it's good that it happens sometimes with, technology as much as we think we know it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning to you. I
Good
know it,
evening to you.
yeah, thank you. I think it may be slightly cold there. Is it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what is it? It's about 50
Okay.
degrees right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but, so, welcome here, and I will just briefly introduce the whole
Sure.
thing to followers and will introduce you too. So, welcome to everybody. People who've been following and joining our lives. People who are new, who are likely to watch the recording later. Lovely to have you on this first or second Saturday of December. No, yeah, first Saturday
First.
of December.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. And we are going to, you know, meet with, we've already met, but we are going to bring JJ Barrera's views, lives, reality, and of course, have some fun along the way, right?
Hmm.
JJ is again one of my very serendipitous, very what do I say? Fortunate connections on Instagram. They showed up in my feed, and now here we are, right? I'm so
I'm so
gracious of JJ to accept to talk. We had a longish offline meet, rather offline from Instagram, but not offline from the internet, right? Because JJ is on the southwest coast of the US. I
Mhm.
am in southern India, but the internet has brought us closer right into our own homes. And, so it is so delightful that because it's quite early in the morning for JJ, and as usual, busy weekdays plus weekend, and there's me who's going to go blah 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 for some time. Right? But very quickly about JJ, their agent Ace, of course, and also in the theater, sorry, industry, and but they are not just a performer, which I thought they were alone, but they also do other important things, sort of very important background work, right? But, if you ask me, JJ is like one of those backstage heroes which make everything happen in the foreground. Yeah. So some of us see glitz and glamour, but then all the hard work which goes on, right? Plus, also, it is sort of a momentous time for us, you know, and I will quickly bring you in, JJ, on this. Okay, momentous time for us, specifically the three groups or the intersectional queer collectives in India, which are hosting Insta Lives. It's almost a year since we started. And for me and for the others who are again doing background work, it's kind of become, I don't know what to call it, was a passion, obsession, tradition, whatever. But also, the other very important thing on which JJ and I, connected, which means, being ace is so important. Being non-binary, agender, and gender fluid is also extremely important. It's so much integral to our lives. But, we both have been in IT, and, JJ is also doing lots of IT work. Right, but the thing about what is happening in these two so-called democracies of the world, just in terms of population, I think, of course, India is the largest in terms of population in the world, yes. But in terms of democracies, I think India is the largest, and the US is the second largest for so many years. But it is such a shame and a sham, actually, this whole thing about democracy, not just because of the presidential election result in November in the US and the fascist party, which has been continued to be in government for over a decade in India. We thought we were close to defeating them, but it didn't happen in June. So, and as my partner says, there've been so many democracies voting in this year, particularly 2024. But unfortunately, everyone either has gone completely right wing, not that the others are, any so much, they're slightly better maybe, and some are center but almost leaning, so that's the tragedy. And finally, with the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and of course, we know in Sudan and other countries, um, we don't find too much hope even in the pretentious democracy parties. But as queer people, as queer trans people, um, I think, JJ, it is tragic. Yeah. Like,
Mm,
so many things are not just being rolled back, they're completely being denied outright.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we just found out, for the US, we just recently experienced the Supreme Court on, I think, Wednesday,
Mm.
discussing transgendered youth and parents, and whether, this sounds so odd to say, whether parents have a right to, you know, um, permit their trans youth, their children to for gender affirming care, which just sounds, it sounds so oddly uh apocalyptic almost. It just feels really um like everything is rolling back so far. Like a lot of progress that we've made as the US has been rolling back, is looks like it will be rolling back within the next 4 years, to the point where I think when our election happened just this last month, and the same thing kind of happened. A lot of us thought we were going to move in the right direction, and we ended up not. Um, and I think a lot of people who were upset were trying to think of um, why. Aside from the obvious, why? Like, in order to get over your anger and your frustration, you kind of have to understand it a lot. And I think for me personally, my big the thing I had to grieve the most is that eh, on November 3rd, there were a lot of things that I thought with the next coming election I would see realized within my lifetime.
Right.
And then the fourth happened and the fifth, and I was like, oh, no, it's probably going to go backwards. And those rights and those attitudes and those things um, that I pictured happening, like when I'm in my 80s, that's not going to happen. Maybe with it by the time I'm 54 now. So maybe like by the time I'm in my 60s, 70s, we'll probably hopefully make our way back to where we are 2 years ago, maybe. You know what I mean? It's so amazing how damaging the next 4 years are going to be. And with Wednesdays, you know, the way Wednesday went, we had a wonderful attorney, um,
Trans-
speaking on our behalf. Yeah. But just hearing the discussions, you're just kind of like, oh, I know how this is going to go. They're probably going to agree with Tennessee, and it's probably just going to, you know, So, but one thing that I do, one thing that helps me with this is that um, you mentioned queer joy in a lot of the comments, and I think we're hurt, but I don't think that's going to go away. And I think a lot of what they're going to take is political and is, legislative, but I don't think they'll be able to squelch who we are and how we live and, the joy we feel being ourselves. And it's that kind of made me feel a little bit better in that that will probably get stronger in these next 4 years for us. We may not have good reactions from the public for it, but I think, you know, at least most of us will find unity. Most of us will do things like this, where you and I became friends, like from across the 13 and a half hours away. And I think things like this are going to happen. And I think they will happen and still can happen. And I'm thinking maybe the future, although legislatively it will not, and societally it won't be, it will in no way be better in 4 years. But, the community itself, I think, still has a lot of room to grow and be joyful and, discover ways of aid and of helping each other. I mean, the queer community is all about care. We're always taking care of each other, no matter who we are. So I think that's just going to get stronger and stronger. I hope. I hope.
So love I find in what you said, like and by the way, your ace glasses are superb.
Oh, thank you. Look, I have trans glasses underneath.
Then maybe binary soul sometime. Yeah, it does. I mean, there's no end to this, but anyway, that is so so touching. And so you know, is, as you say, I mean, I remember also, not just in the conversation we had, we were both like bonding, like, I mean, friends who left each other some time back and we're reconnecting. But in the words that changed on text, that I was so, touched, thrilled. Oh my gosh, this person believes me without even asking too much. Because I think what connected apart from our asexuality and of course the broad non-binary this thing, though I don't use the term non-binary and I explained to you, but also about these connections, right, which are, as you say, hopefully going to increase. And I think I see more than hope in that. I see the necessity and somewhere some kind of certainty that I think it will happen. It needs to happen. And yeah, sort of we hold each other, yeah,
Yeah.
from near or far or you know, and yes, as you said, believe me, I mean, trigger warning, but when that Orlando incident happened at the nightclub, yeah,
Mm.
doesn't feel like just a few years ago. It feels even more recent than that. Uh, we felt pain, okay?
Yeah.
Many people who even mentioned, even I've been to the US, but I've never visited Florida. Many people didn't even know Florida, what it was. But our community got, it was like almost the contemporary times Stonewall thing, right? Attack,
Mhm.
right? And there are so many such instances. And the way I am following, and I'm sure so many of us are following what is happening at the US Supreme Court, it is not just significant and historic, but it is almost like a survival thing for so many of us across the world. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not to burden anybody with additional responsibility, but I think you understand where I'm coming from, right, Jay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, no, definitely. But I think that's why it's important. Well, for me, one of the positive things that's happened from this is that I've kind of uh, seen now how, because for a long time as an asexual, I did not feel part of the queer community. Not until a few years ago did and I've known I was asexual since I was 41. So, from 41 to 50-ish, around 50, 51, almost 10 years, I did not feel part of any community. because I felt the one documentary I saw about asexuality was horrible. It was very problematic and it was horrible. And it was done by an allo person. So it was weird seeing this documentary about, me and my heart and my, the way I think, portrayed by someone who doesn't understand it at all. But it's just been recent since I've felt since I've kind of been able to discover the ace language and kind of get a clearer idea of who I am and how that has opened me up to my agender.
Hello?
Here we go. Am I
Yeah.
am I back?
Oh, it happens. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, that is so important. Yeah, kind of connected you with your agender identity. But for us, it's not just an identity, it's a reality. It's part of us, right,
Mm-hmm.
Dia?
Yeah. It's part of me that I totally didn't even recognize, but because of the outer social structures. You know what I mean? The structures that we all grow up in, not all of them are binary and all of them are allo normative and all of them are heteronormative. So if you don't exist in those structures and if you aren't given that language, you don't you're just confused. You know what I mean? You try to define yourself based on someone else's language. But once I discovered that and was able to kind of say to myself and to other people clearly who I am, um, I started recognizing true people and true queer community. And there are still a lot of people in the queer community that don't acknowledge us. We know that. We know that there's tons of, the normal gays and all that stuff. But um, but even with all that, I still feel very much part of the queer community.
Yeah.
And I feel like now that I know myself a little more, the reason I felt so kind of safe, like replying to you, was even though you just kind of slid into my DMs and it was just kind of like, hey, this is Ritash and I do this and I do that. And I don't know, I think I could just tell that, oh, yes, no, this is genuine. And we can recognize that a lot. And of course, we have to be careful, but especially with social media. But, you know,
We get the ace vibes
yeah,
even online, the digital ace vibes, right?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, like it is like what, and that's why I said there. I think, despite being a writer and a speaker, sometimes I keep saying this lately. Sometimes words are insufficient to express my gratitude and gladness to people like you. I've connected with so
Oh,
many. A Space London is here. Maybe Gabby or whoever. They are a group who I connected with a few months ago. We did a longish live, and they kind of connected with other ACE communities, because that's the thing, somewhere, there are a few ACEs who say, I don't find I'm queer or whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to explain anything on their behalf, but or they could be heteroromantic or something. That is completely their choice, or whatever, their decision, or their preference, and more importantly, it's natural to them. But our idea is not to at any time question or judge anybody. Okay.
no gatekeeping. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Having said that, I completely resonate with this thing about, and you know what? Among the many coincidences, commonalities we both are discovering, you said you sort of discovered when you're 41, the thing,
Hmm.
and for me that was almost the same time, which was like 2013. Okay. Yeah, so a decade
Yeah.
ago, because I'm 51 and
Ah.
you're 54. So for both of us, actually, it happened almost same time, like around a decade. And but the other thing, this also brings me back to um, being of Asian origin, the diversity that we have in all the whole, not the continent, but each region of Asia
Mhm.
and within our countries, whatever the size and
Yeah.
population, all that, right? And yet we come from countries where, or origins, let me say, where English, fluent English speaking, urban education and upbringing is
Mhm.
almost like not just a privilege, it's a passport to so many
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, definitely.
Yet, because of the generation we both belong to, right?
Mhm.
All this did not help us to even realize that there is something and somebody called Ace. Though we understood something was different about ourselves, I'm sure many of us understand this, much before we find community or terminology or whichever. And more so because we've been in IT, and I keep repeating this, but I never tire because it's so important, that because I've been asked, it's a privilege and all that, and I'll tell you, I've had privileges, but how they have not helped me at all,
Mhm.
because IT in the 90s, even in countries like the US and all, that was there, but it was not ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then internet access, even if it was there, it was slow, it was like restricted and stuff.
Mhm.
And I was like, even if I had all that, I didn't know what to look for, how to
Yeah.
search something online, like how to search for myself online, some
Yeah.
part of myself, right? And
Right. I mean, it's something that just proves that the education and the knowledge itself that we gain through these privileged, wonderfully privileged systems, well, not wonderfully privileged, but wonderful systems that happen to be privileged. Um, the education is important, but they're only one set of building blocks. Like
mm-hmm.
you have to have, in order for me, in my experience, to realize everything that eventually I came to, um, it required compassion. Like it required um, empathy. It required so much from the outer parts. You know what I mean? From the external structure parts, and that was not there for us. I mean, without me stumbling across um a stat advice, on Instagram and on TikTok, I think at first. Without me stumbling across that, and their posts were very informative and very, you know, good. If I feel this way, um is that, what if I feel this way? Well, there's a word for that, and he would give you the word. And I'm sorry, they would give you the word, and they just kept listing all these, like, each post that they put out there. I was like, oh, I identify with that. Oh, okay, wait, that's me. But without his, or I'm sorry, without their posts, I don't, and without their compassion through their posts, I don't know that I would have ever. I think I would still be confused right now. And it's not just them; it's a lot of other creators and a lot of youth now. I'm not. I don't know if it's because they just have more compassion, or if they're growing up in a time where they're just seeing more queerness and more, um, more of our community out in the open. That that it reflects back on themselves, and they feel free to feel how they are, and that's so important for the future. A lot of my knowledge and language came from ASTAT advice, but also from a lot of younger content creators who were also ACE. And without them, I wouldn't, without that kind of, they have this innate acceptance as young ace people. They understand, no, there's not really any gatekeeping. No, if you even if you're, hetero, if you're hetero romantic, you're still ace. If no matter how you experience aceness, you're welcome here. Whether it's through trauma, whether it's through, whether your tie to aceness is something that happened in the past, or whether your tie to aceness is temporary or fluid, or whether your tie to aceness is, you know, not, I hate the word passing, but is more accepted in the allo, in the allo structure, you're still welcome here. And it's that compassion and that um, kind of acceptance that just made me want to participate in that, and made me want to, that actually gave me a lot of joy. So it's something that I like to talk about. And it's something that, I find, oh yeah, there's a lot of experiences that I've had that I could probably share and other people would see and recognize and kind of give them a language and give them an opening, like open the door for them into exploring aceness and seeing if it's how they feel and how they are, and that it's valid, you know.
Sure, sure. So and views, and more importantly, all this is also experience, right, for us, right? And then also just what Gabby here is saying, she's one of the coordinators, volunteers with A Space London, which I mentioned. And yes, Ace Dad advice I've heard, and of course people like Yasmin Benoit
Oh
and Sarah
yeah.
from Taiwan, from Canada. We are all, and then the Aloe Ace podcast. Many of us, I think, I'm not trying to get into any this thing, lead or like that. We are doing this perhaps because it is us we want to express and share. And
Mhm.
beauty of all this is we are not doing it for some either for a prize or for recognition, fame, whatever, or even, not that any of that is right or wrong, good or bad, but the question is because I think for us it means so much more, especially that we did not have awareness community, like we earlier said, also how and where to seek it, right?
Mhm.
Information.
Yeah.
All the so-called minimal or growing infrastructure, language privileges were of no use. That, like for instance, after I left my IT corporate job, yeah, I mean, I'm originally an computer science graduate and everything, so I can't completely go away from it. Yeah, and now with thing in this world is digitized. Having said that, right? But not only that did not help, actually, also, even very sadly, um, I started, well, happily, I started writing about various human rights issues and also consulting and assisting grassroots,
Mhm.
trans in India, because that time, about a decade ago, people never said queer trans. Yeah, many were.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I did not even find anything or anyone mention asexuality or even, uh, I mean, not just the term, but you know what I'm getting at, right? That
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
aspect of
Sources weren't
asexuality.
there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That it's even a possibility, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And with the, the normative structures at the time when
Mm,
we were young,
mm,
um, all the normative structures that were set up
mm.
were just I didn't realize until I kind of felt comfortable with who I was
Yeah.
or who I am, how how much that worked against me just being
mm,
me. Because there was and that's why I think compassion is such a huge part of it, because
mm,
I was shamed a lot for the way I actually was, you know what I mean? For the way, for who I truly was. I was shamed a lot, or told that, oh, that we need to fix that.
mm,
Like, we need, oh, you know, you don't want, do you have a boyfriend, do you have a girlfriend, do you have, this, do you have that?
mm,
And if the answer is no, it's like, oh, why? Well, we need to fix that. We need to do this. We need to do that. Why don't you want this? Why don't you want that?
mm,
And all of this was just, oh, no, this is just who I am.
yeah,
But at the time in high school and beginnings of college and stuff,
mm,
that was in the 80s and 90s for me.
yeah,
So in order for me to find information, I couldn't Google
mm,
anything. I mean, we're older than
yeah,
Google. So, you know,
even,
I had to go to the library, and I did,
mm,
but I had to go to the library
mm,
and, look up in the card catalog and pull out microfiche and read publications on microfiche. And in the library, you couldn't take it home with you.
yeah,
And I had to, those were all the current publications, you
mm,
know what I mean? And by
mm,
current, that was like, oh, so last month or 2 years ago or 4 years ago, this was written about this.
mm,
And when it comes to asexuality, there was nothing even there to
mm, mm,
find.
mm, mm,
So, and you've got that, you've got this allonormative structure, this heteronormative structure, that you're just kind of like going, okay, I'm trying to fit in here. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm
mm,
trying to, the quote unquote right thing.
mm,
But you just, for a while you just feel like, why can't I get this right? I feel like I'm failing as first, you feel like you're failing as a man. You
yeah,
feel like you're failing as a woman. You feel like you're failing as a whatever. Eventually, I know some people have, realized that they're or identified more with homosexuality first. But then they feel like, oh yeah, I felt like I was even failing at
mm,
homosexuality. And then and then once I discovered the term aceness all the way in like 20 what 20 20 11 2012 2011, um even then it felt like such a new concept. Still, it was what, like, Avon was maybe like 9 years old at that time
maybe,
or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, it was like early 2000s, I think.
mm,
But even then, we were shunned by it, but I think because the L the other parts of the community, the other areas of our community are very are seen as very
mm,
hypersexualized,
mm,
that us being kind of disconnected or even connected sexually but in a completely different way, that was shunned and that was feared and that was, ooh, no, I don't want to catch that, you know what I mean, keep that away from me. So, but now, obviously, with language and with the tools that we have now,
mm,
it's a lot easier to just get on there, Google it. You can Google agosexuality, and the definition pops up, and you're like, oh yeah, I think that's me. So
mm,
you don't have to go to a library. You don't have to drive to a library, look up a word that you don't know yet in the card catalog, and then just do research from there.
totally. And also, very quickly, Gabby, again, thank you so much for all that detailed sharing, because I know Gabby also relates to this, considering, yeah, she's almost a little younger than me, a couple of years, but yeah. And I know, Gabby, I'm taking the liberty of mentioning this because you're open and don't mind it, but very important points.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Oh
you're
yeah.
also, I was waiting for the one, and then I did feel like I was failing or broken. Totally. You know what? And the contrast is, JJ, and partly also because I studied in a Catholic school, because in India
Ooh.
there's so much of it, okay, and it was always like, oh, your English would be better because English is, in these countries, right? So not the Protestant school, but Protestant schools were not there, right, in the
Uh-huh.
80s. So yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you so many times, Gabby. I have to tell that again and again. Yeah. So that's the thing, all these things. Now, the question is, I'm agnostic. And technically, I was not born into a Christian family. It didn't matter, what was
Mhm.
in school by teachers. If it was not the gospel, it was like your or the Bible. It was almost that, right?
Yes.
So you couldn't oppose, you couldn't say. Now that's the thing, and this is also so important as aces, because it's often mistaken for prudery, abstinence, celibacy, okay, which is like, right? But typically across so many cultures, right? Yeah, and this is not for safety, but this is also for the from a false sense of morality, that you do not you can't stop your thoughts, but you don't share them if they are sexual. You do not express sexuality or desire. So unless you know that, then you would know that I don't have it or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But it was very strangely parallelly, you can't do that, you can't discuss, you can't express, okay. But
Mhm.
as you said, allonormativity was the normal thing, right?
Mhm.
So that is why this extra repression we feel, not that. See, it's such a strange thing. Like, people want to again conclude, again, obviously wrongly conclude this. You're so used to the repression that you are. It is not that.
Mhm.
Here we are not repressing, it's a forcible repression, because the allos also are not able to express to some extent. We further cannot express, but at some time, at least allos, they are going to express it, if non-verbally, maybe. We cannot, because it's like as if we are denying somebody their space, right? But
Mhm.
actually it's the, we are being abnormalized, we are being unnaturalized without us abnormalizing somebody, right? And
Mhm.
the I sometimes put it as simply as this: okay, I did not choose asexuality, asexuality chose me. Much as
Mhm.
people say it's a choice or something, it is not something so straightforward as, or a black and white as just choice, right? It is, you
Right.
probably choose.
It's not.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I no. I just feel like it isn't a
Yeah.
choice. If it were a choice, it would be celibacy. If
Yeah,
it were a choice, it would be abstinence. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Um,
could be.
yeah. But it definitely, for my experience, asexuality was something that was always in me,
Correct.
and
Yeah,
I just was not allowed to see it.
right.
But eventually when I did see it, it just made so many past thoughts through puberty, through it made my entire past just kind of snap and click into
Mm,
place. And I was just kind of like, oh, you know what? I remember when I was 12, this happened, and this happened with another boy, or this happened with another girl, or this happened. And it just made me go, oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that's why I had those reactions. That's why I felt so weird, and that's why I took things so differently than other people did. It's because of who I am and how I did wasn't allowed to be who I am. And you know what I mean? To the point where you think, no, that's not how I am. That's how it's how I'm not supposed to be. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, no, I feel this way, but instead of going, I feel this way, so that's who I am, you're sitting there going, I feel this way, but I shouldn't be because of everybody else.
mm,
So, because everybody else says, no, something's wrong. But it's I honestly think that our experience with that as ace people,
mm,
and honestly any marginalized group,
mm,
black women, trans people, and anyone that's marginalized, I think we can use that as a strength.
mm,
I think that that is a skill once coming out of that and learning how to recognize,
Yes.
seeing that in your past and recognizing that in your present, I think that's a skill that a lot of more privileged people, um, in other areas, that they don't get. Like a lot of allo folks, um, the privilege of growing up in the society as the people who the society accepted,
Mm,
that leads to kind of like not a hole, but like it leads to a skill that they haven't built.
mm,
But whereas a marginalized people, we there's and I see it all the time in discussions online and stuff. There's a perspective of, oh yes, no, they're not used
mm,
to
mm,
living oppressed. They're not used to every minute of your life thinking, okay, how am I going to fit in today?
mm,
Okay, who is safe on the
mm,
playground? They were lucky enough to just go out and play.
mm.
But like for a lot of us, we were like, okay, who's who's safe to play with? Who's
Yeah.
not going to verbally accost me? You know what I mean? Like
Correct.
who's yeah. So I think we can use that as a strength. And honestly, that was a big part of me being so open with your invitation,
Yeah.
when I first got it. It was like, oh, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that is how it has been with so many other people I've connected and stuff. I, of course, also graciously understand the few who do not want to. I mean, like, it's not
mhm,
I, but I can't do beyond that. I was like, okay. But the point is, as you said, you know, despite all our openness and everything, even now, I think you will relate to this, JJ. Somewhere still, we are not holding back, but there is that sense of, little bit of discomfort, not with ourselves, but or say mixed with a bit of anxiety. I don't know what, like, how is someone going to respond to us, right? Yeah.
mhm.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
And it's not just the people, including people who we know, but sometimes physically the environment may be different, right? And
Hmm.
because for us, as you said, you know, it is actually almost a day to day negotiation, okay, with
Hmm.
internally and with ourselves also, and with the external world, however familiar it may be, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
which is why also it brings me to the question Gabby has asked. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it. Have you?
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. Have you seen Hete's exclusion while in person with LGBTQIA folk, or is it just online? But, JJ, you could respond to it, and I will
Mhm.
also respond. Yeah.
Yeah. I exclusion is hard. It's a hard topic for me because,
Mm,
um we've all experienced that.
yeah.
Just because of who we are, we've experienced exclusion.
Mm,
Yet exclusion is something that you do without knowing about
mm,
it. You
mm,
know what I mean? So I definitely do see. I mean, I honestly, Gabby, I don't have a lot of a lot of other ace friends in real life. It's even here in Los Angeles, there are groups, but we're still few and far between within the city. I try to make as many connections as possible with my ace family, but that I don't know yet, that I haven't met yet. But so it's I can't really speak to it in person, but I do see it online. I'm a member of a lot of ace Facebook groups and different groups, and I do. It's very insidious in that it's very like it's really something that's like subtle
mm,
but very painful. You know what I mean? And I feel that that's really unfortunate, and that's why I like to stress, the no gatekeeping. If somebody comes in and my if someone comes into the conversation and says something and my reaction is wait, are they really ace? I immediately squelch that
Mm,
because it doesn't matter. The experience they're experiencing is connecting to the community that they just
mm,
found. So
mm,
it's important to let them, maybe they're not ace, maybe, or maybe they are right now.
mm,
Maybe that's how they identify and feel right now.
mm.
And maybe when certain things happen in their life, or if certain things happen, with their partner, or with, maybe they'll eventually feel like, oh, I don't feel so ace anymore. I feel a little more aloe. It's one of those things where that it's fluid, and that's fine. That's how it should be. In order for us to acknowledge and live happily in our own identities, it's important to know that, yes, that can shift as you grow. We're human, and we, just like we should be accepted for our identities now, we should be accepted for our future identities and what we grow into. And when people are specifically for het aces, because they're so, um, aceness is something that we don't wear on our sleeve, really.
Mm,
Nobody comes up and asks you,
mm,
hey, it's very hard to, there's a lot of, uh, you know, homo romantic and homo attractive activities and behaviors that are obviously homo. They're obviously gay. But there's not really anything that's obviously
mm.
ace. You know what I mean? I still have trouble. I like the where where I find a lot of help in youth, in our ace youth, is that I'm trying to find more ace representation in literature, in movies, in film, and in books. The youth, because they're so much more connected to both their aceness and the aceness outside, the external social aceness, because they're so connected with it, they can see it so quickly. And I'm still not good at that. But um I think it's definitely something that could help me see a lot of the het ace exclusion more, and avoid it and call it out. I mean, you have to call it out. And I try to call it out in the group sensitively, because in including someone else, I try not to exclude other people. So but yes, I have seen it online. I have not really experienced it in real life. But again, I could have been like, it just could have been something that I didn't see externally, because of the nature of aceness.
Yeah,
But you know like it's hard unless you're having a conversation like this, where you're able to say, oh, I'm homoromantic, agosexual, ace, and someone else say, oh no, I'm heteroromantic. In a lot of my groups, the introductions are, I'm a heteromantic ace and blah blah blah, and they're welcome just as much. But then there's always those microaggressions in the comments where you're like, oh, okay, that's not very friendly to a heteromantic ace. you know you
correct.
just have to call it out. And it's part of, I'm sure, within our community, it's part of still being tied to that allo normative
Right.
structure. So you're accidentally using that language and saying something in a way that person, that a het ace person would not feel right with. And it's just about recognizing that, calling that out, and just kind of but still being compassionate about that to the person who did it. It's
Oh,
all about breaking down the normativity.
oh, fantastic! Such a lucid response. I mean, every one of thing, and also Gabby's comments and questions are always superb. And yeah, uh, that's the thing. You know what, Gabby? I almost have similar experiences because, like as you said, JJ too, that many of the groups are much younger people, if at all. Yeah, and in fact,
Mhm.
many of them would have started only in the last couple of years, perhaps the online groups, maybe few, maybe I don't think there are one or two groups in India for aces which are many more years old, but I don't know why we didn't hear of it or them much.
Mhm.
It was also because I think for a long time people were like, A is ace or ally, right? That was a
Mhm.
question. And
Yeah.
uh, uh, the English is um, common in India. It is not the primary language for many people. Yeah,
Right. Hmm.
yeah. Yeah. So, which is why it's also a language of privilege, and of course, more urban and kind of the class and everything matters.
Hmm.
The caste, of, unfortunately, but yeah, and that's the coming to the next thing, but very quickly also to add to what and also partly my reality is that sort of connects with what we've been discussing now in all the other race conversations is as such, you know, whatever the is, we know it's a spectrum. We could be also of other identities. Yeah, I mean, caste, class, gender, and so many other things, and romanticism and everything, or aromantic. But ace itself is still so invisible, so much more misunderstood, and thereby almost automatically not even excluded. For me, what if I think, even throwing back to a decade ago when I started understanding the term, or rather understanding that was what was suitable to me, was that the invalidation is very high. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
that combined with the pathologization, that
Yes.
think um, is one of the major challenges that we experience. And tragically, like you said a few seconds ago, JJ, is that we every time, despite our best efforts, have to speak in relation to allonormativity,
Hmm.
amatonormativity, allos, yeah. I mean, leave amatonormativity aside for some time because that is more on the romanticism thing, right, or the romantic spectrum. But
Hmm.
allonormativity is something, as if heteronormativity is insufficient. Allonormativity is another major thing. Yeah, like both is combined and the hypersexualization. Okay, or and otherwise the whole pathologization or the whole correlation to negative experiences. Oh, you've had bad sexual encounters, experiences, libido, and then the other bigger pathologizing words,
Hmm.
what is it? Hormonal abnormality, insufficiency, deficiency.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, mental disorder. What nonsense. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
much as I try to use dark humor and stuff like that, but one thing which over the years I have learned to say is I am ace. Yes, it is my identity, but for me it's more than an identity, it's a part of me. Okay, and
Yeah.
ace is not, it is not this, it is not that. No, this is ace. That's what I've also consciously learned to say. And I also stopped saying it's a lack of something, because lack is
Yeah.
again considered short or something missing, right? I'm sure, I mean, I told you this, JJ, but I'm just repeating this because there will be many
Yeah.
people and watching. I think somewhere these so-called small words make a big difference. For me, it's
Mhm.
absent. Now, whether it's attraction, desire, arousal, that's also maybe more intricate. But to me, yes. But I respect people who use their own terms, their own language definitions, and I always say, even if I may be a sex negative is, okay, I don't pass judgment on people who are sexually very active and doing whatever, as long as you are respecting boundaries, and you are stopping to stop, you will stop judging
Yeah.
or abnormalizing us, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Kind of just treat me the same way. You know, I'm respecting you. Please respect me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I feel like the whole, the power of normativity, you know what I mean? The power of any normativity
correct.
um, is something that can really work against. One of the things that breaks my heart the most. I belong to an Aces over 50 group, an Aces over 30 group, and a lot of like Ace memes and different groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
And what I find in a lot of the younger, well, in both actually, in a lot of younger and older, and the older Ace groups, they there's a kind of there's like a theme of, oh, I'm Ace and I really wish I wasn't,
Uh,
and oh, I'm Ace but I'm so tired of being Ace, and that being who I am, that really breaks my heart because I feel like they could there's so much joy that they're missing out
mm,
on, and it's because a lot of their happiness and a lot of what they see and structure as joy and happiness comes from the allo part of their of normativity. And when you're living outside of that but wanting what's in that,
mm,
you kind of don't realize, yeah, you can have that. You can still have all that. You just have to see it from your own perspective.
mm,
You know what I mean? That's why I agree with you in that it's not an absence. You know what I mean? It's not missing something. It's not a hole. Like the A in asexuality, just I mean, asexuality is when I remember when I first discovered when the word first, I turned the knob and started opening the door into the word asexuality. I the beginnings of the definition struck me, and I was like, oh yes, I think this is it. But I wanted it to be like being gay or being lesbian, or like I wanted it to be this monolithic thing that, oh, this is it, and everybody who's this is this, and everybody who's this likes this, but later I realized this is the beauty of being Ace. Um, it's not
mm,
monolithic. It's far from monolithic. There
yeah,
are probably as many ways of being Ace as there are Ace people. Like all of us probably experience Aceness in a slightly or greatly differing way.
mm,
I mean, there's so many ways to experience, which is another reason for me that, referring to the question about seeing het ace exclusion, I'm sure it happens, but it's the ace community is so varied and diverse that it's kind of I kind of it's hard for me to kind of see when part of us is not feeling, or when I'm using language that is not helpful to somebody else in my same community. You know what I mean?
mm,
So but yeah, and I feel like uh, when someone says, oh yeah, I feel like asexuality is a void in me where it's because I don't experience something that I am the way that I am. But I wish I could flip that around for them. And because the way I see it is, no, asexuality is the way I experience something. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It is
Mm,
the way
totally.
that I
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, it's the way I experience sexuality. It's the
Mm,
way I experience, because I happen to be, sex favorable. But I'm still asexual, so I still have a libido. You still have drive. You still have all of that still happens. I just experience it completely without attraction. So, but that's my experience. There's
right.
tons of other ace experiences that even do experience attraction just outside of the allonormative way. That's still ace. You know what I mean? That it's just so varied and wonderful. And the more varied it is, the more easy it is to just accept people who are thinking, "Hey, I feel like I might be a part of this group." I love that in a lot of our groups, the initial word is welcome. It's not, well, how do you feel about this? Or how
Mm,
does this? And if somebody does that in the groups, it's always, hey, no gatekeeping, you know?
correct. Yeah, good.
So,
Super
Yeah.
fantastic points that you're sharing. Yeah, and because that's the thing, right? This is our experience of life. Yeah,
Hmm.
and even joy. And I'm like, how do I know? You know, like they say, the usual, you don't know what you're missing. Yes, I'm missing something. I don't know. I don't want to know, and I'm okay with how I am. Right?
Yeah, and you are missing something also.
Yeah.
Aloes are missing something
True.
also. They are there is an ace experience
Yeah.
that they are missing.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of a void. It's just a matter of a difference.
Correct.
You know what I mean? To me, the void is in all of the holes are in the allonormative structure.
Yeah.
And those are where the holes are, and we are meant to fill those holes.
Exactly.
Like our community is meant to go out and go, oh, you're feeling this way, well, here, let me fill that hole for you. This is how I experience it. Here, let me fill that hole for you. This is how I experience life. And it's not just about sexuality. It's about everything. It's about, like, my sexuality also led to my transness. So and it leads to other things. It led to my atheism. I mean, well, it confirmed my atheism. I've been atheist for a while now, but I came from a very religious family,
Yeah.
and they're still religious, and that's wonderful. You know what I mean? Like they find a lot of joy in that. I don't anymore, and they're kind of okay with it, but they still worry about me. But it's not a deal breaker. It's not a, you know what I mean? I still have my family. I still have, but it's I feel like the void is not in us. The void is out in the structure, and we are solutions to those voids.
Yeah.
You know.
That's so lovely. Yeah. That's right. Except that often, except in such conversations, or maybe little more now, we the see, all of us, we know it's fundamental, it's basic to all living beings that we had differences, even with the so we have differences even with the species. We can respectfully disagree in so many relationships also. They continue based on whatever the relationship, right? Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and for us, especially queer people, we family itself has so many meanings and all that, right? But we usually, and I can say even with many of us, the like outspoken, really out expressive, open, also we never go about saying, even though someone's aloneness or is abnormal to us actually, because
Hmm.
normalcy is being ace, right? But we don't go about saying, how are you hallow, as you said,
Yeah.
right? How can you be hallow? I mean, like, if we are okay, figured our lives and getting along with it and doing things which we love and we like and whatever, right? And, you know, I am, for example, I'm a sexual assault survivor. But that has nothing to do with I did not become ace because of that, or, whatever, or I did not experience it because sometimes there can be one person can have so many aspects about them, but the correlation is not necessary. It need not be a byproduct. It need not be a cause, right?
Mhm.
Eh, and why are you looking for something and stressing yourself out about my life when I am not?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that there's there and you know what? If there are people who are ace because of their sexual assault, that's fine
Yeah,
too. Like, come on in. Like, maybe that will help you resolve your trauma.
yeah,
And that is nothing but good.
yeah,
And the thing is, once you have resolved that trauma, not that it can be fully resolved, but once that trauma becomes something you can live with, and well, I mean, I am also a sexual assault survivor. So, but mine happened when I was a child. However, I've worked through all that stuff, and because for a long time I thought, A, I thought that that made a difference in my validity as an asexual person, which it does not. And B, once I didn't resolve it, but once I learned once I learned the place of that event, where it is in me and where it lives healthily, somewhat healthily, um, I was still ace. Like once I grew into, okay, that can be a constructive, I can use that as a constructive part of me as an adult now. Once I reached that phase, I was still ace.
Correct.
I reached that phase when I was in my 20s, and I was still ace. I was still having all these feelings. You know what I mean? In fact, in my 20s, I thought that addressing that be would fix me as an ace person, because I didn't realize I was ace yet. And it didn't. I still felt the way I did. I still felt didn't feel sexual attraction, and the fact that I didn't feel that attraction didn't feel weird to me. Like, the only reason it felt weird to me was because people were telling me it was weird.
Ah,
So that was, that was a strange part of growing because I trained as an actor
mm,
for in the 90s, which is, for an ace person, not a great time to to train as to train in vulnerability and sexuality in the 90s. You know what I mean? It was kind of weird, but it the fact that I was able to learn through the craft of acting, the fact that I was able to learn vulnerability, like how to be vulnerable, A, how to be vulnerable for yourself, and B, how to be vulnerable in front of people and to an audience,
mm,
which is difficult. You know what I mean? It's part of the skill that I didn't realize you had to do. But once I learned that, it was kind of like a door opening to kind of being a little more accepting to who I was. But then at the same time, being told, when you're studying acting and when you're studying different techniques, when you're reading certain texts, you have very allo directors and very allo, scene partners that when they interpret that text, everything is about sex. Everything is about, you just want to have sex with that person. And you know, I was like, we're talking about pastries. How do I want to have sex with the person? Like, we're just talking about this mundane thing. But no, deep down in the core, you have to make the decision. So it was odd growing up with, developing with that, and honestly learning how to perform that without feeling that, and still remaining vulnerable and still being considered a good actor by some. You know what I mean? So, it was an odd kind of thing. But I think that, to bring it back to your point, I really feel like, that's part of the importance of accepting and not gatekeeping asexuality, and why people are there. It does not matter at all why you're there. If you feel like aceness will help you, if you feel like you relate to aceness, in its varied forms, just come on in and feel comfortable, so that if you feel like you want to work on something that happened to you, you have the space to do that within our space. And then if you want to stay. And if you don't feel like, oh, you know what, you know i I think I feel differently now, then it was fluid. And then like, go on, and you had a nice experience with aceness, and spread that to other allos. You know what I mean?
I-
So
yeah, yeah, very, very fabulous points and very so important. Yeah, that's the thing, right? The other thing, which, especially considering our age and the times that we grew in, and also sort of the limitations of, as you said, not only the, like catalogs and what do you look, it also, as you said, without even knowing the word asexuality, how do you know how to look for them,
yeah.
right? What happening to me, right? And also, right, the other thing also which happens with me is, now somebody may think that I became whatever sex negative because of bad sexual experiences. For me, the thing is that because of not just hypersexualization, allonormativity becoming, even without the term, it was the thing.
Hmm.
Right? They see sex in everything or whatever, and sexual experience. So somewhere, because I did not know, I tried to have sexual experiences, episodes, whatever you call them, and when I realized that that was not me, yeah, it's not just about
Hmm.
the enjoyment, as you said, no. I even either you do not feel the need, you don't feel the attraction, and whichever.
Yeah.
So why I think this extra thing about us, that I think in some ways on a longer period makes us more confident and sort of self assured that yes, Ace is me, I am Ace, right?
Yeah.
It's not even like something because as you said, the advantage of the youth nowadays, the younger aces, is of course if they have community awareness, there's so much information that they don't have to but for us, we even literally self doubted, self shamed, and as you said, na, oh, I am not, this is not the way I should be, maybe, but
Hmm.
this is not matching. We don't know what is it that's not matching, whatever, right? So we've been through all that and come here. So though it has been longer and fairly lonely for us, right? Somewhere I think in the overall whatever equation, it has sort of given us more comfort and sort of a reassurance that okay, we finally found our space, and um, may not be looking back anymore, right? I mean, always,
Hmm.
there is never 100% certainty about anything. There's never anything called 100% healing or something. But
Yeah.
as you said, also, it sort of helps you sort out other things for yourself, like the gender and
Hmm.
the romanticism, even if it's aromantic, and because already you're also partly going back to what Gabby was asking, you were literally fighting. I mean, yeah, I mean, sort of struggling within your,
Hmm.
the larger queer community. Plus, because of the spectrum of ages, so many things. So actually, it's like so many hurdles you're crossing, or you've crossed, that is actually going to make you not just feel better but also feel stronger,
Yeah.
right, in some, right? And as you also said, when you navigate so much of exclusion, marginalization, whichever, despite having some privileges, and some maybe those privileges have helped you, yeah, to navigate this also,
Oh,
that
definitely.
yeah, that actually leads you to this thing about also the certainty almost, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, um, there's. I feel like there's we're talking about a lot of normativity and dealing with normativity, but there's the monolithic normativity is also something that a lot of ace people even fight, because so many introductions to the ace groups that I see, introductory posts, they are saying, hey, I feel this way, might I be ace? Or hey, there's a lot of people that are exploring that say, hey, I hate this, but does that mean I'm ace? Does that mean I'm and honestly, so many members of the groups are so wonderful, and the very first reactions and first comments are always, um, if you feel that way, then yes, there's a word for that in asexuality. Or no, that sounds like that's not allonormative. So yes, you would be ace, or that sounds like you're experiencing that out of There's a lot of people that come into asexuality looking for that monolithic structure, and you're thinking, yeah, aceness is one thing, and if I'm that, then that's what I am. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't work that way. And living with, like, being truly comfortable with that, and living with the fact that, yeah, you and I are ace, but we have very different and very similar experiences,
Correct.
and applying that to my the other reasons I was marginalized, like, being a person of color, being outwardly queer. Like, I've always been told, sometimes kindly, sometimes not so kindly, that I sound gay. You know what I mean? That I sound homosexual. And so for a long time, that to me was an insult. And then eventually I was like, well, yeah, I do. So, you know, but yeah, I think that applying that diversity to other things as well is another really big strength, and another big thing that can help us feel more confident. Um, Knowing that a lot of people find confidence in finding one thing that is, oh, here, this is the way things are supposed to be, and this is the way, in finding normativity, whereas we don't have that luxury. We don't. Aceness itself, there's nothing normative really about aceness. If there is, then that's the beginnings of gatekeeping. So if you feel like and I think that's beautiful. You know what I mean? I think if the whole world were, yes, feel like you are, and you just belong, you know what I mean? I think that applying that to so many things could just help, could do nothing but help. You know what I mean? But that's why I'm always saying, yeah, but let's battle the normative structures and tear them down in anything, in any structure. Let's yeah, let's change normal to just average. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way. But okay, a lot of people feel that way. Do you? No. Okay, great. And if that one attitude was open to me as a young ace person, I think I would have gotten here a lot faster, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, like, I mean, I've also trained as a LGBTQIP plus peer counselor,
Mm.
and um, I, I mean, people say, "Oh, that was the way to go." Anyway, we expected you to do that because you have empathy and stuff like that. I mean, maybe perception and stuff. But I am like, see, for me, all that is there. Maybe, I have an extra dose of it. It doesn't matter. You can never measure that. No, not. But I think, like you said, also the uh, the aceness, my aceness, which is why I think amidst my so many other, what do you say, aspects, identities, and most importantly, the realities of me, sort of has helped me understand, not just understand life, place myself in some context, circumstance, with
Mhm.
some, not just confidence and certainty alone, but something like, yes, I will be as caring and as compassionate as I can, but also extend it in such a way. And it's also part of what I learned through peer counseling, or rather unlearned, relearned also, that you need not benchmark yourself against somebody. You
Yeah.
need, you know, right. And like, especially as you say, the younger people, because sometimes I think if they have what we call the earlier in programming times as information overload or data, like kind of things, right? That please do not stress and worry yourself over, is this the way of being gay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is trans this is the only thing, but because asexuality is already there's a spectrum. There is also questioning, understanding, exploring asexuality, whichever. Yeah. And as you said, we have, of course, because of just our age and everything else, learned it from the younger people, right? And then felt good about it and comfortable about it. Why on earth are you keeping on asking yourself that is the, this gayness or this perceived transness and stuff like that? And even sometimes I'll be like, oh, they're faking it, or this is not, I mean, like, please, right? What are you?
Yeah.
You are surely you're queer, and then obviously you've had so much of terrible experiences. Unfortunately, it is never going to end for you. Like you said, JJ, whether
Mhm.
you're 65 or whichever, or yeah.
Yeah.
So please, somewhere, right, that gatekeeping is not there. Yeah. Why is it so difficult? You know, we keep saying humanity, human, be human, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I think I guess as part of my experience, I think that comes from wanting to be accepted.
Mm,
Um, I feel like the drive for normalcy
mm,
is finding normalcy is an easy way to feel accepted.
correct. Yeah.
And however, it's external
Mm,
acception.
mm,
So I think what the nice thing that the ACE community's huge spectrum and diversity offers is once you come in looking for that external acceptance, you're automatically met with
yes,
self-acceptance.
yes, yes.
So you're just kind of you're met with a lot of people who have a
Mm,
lot of self-acceptance and acceptance and are offering you the same thing.
mm,
And so I think it's very foreign. It was an odd feeling for me
mm,
when I first thought when my first I learned about my aceness through therapy, and it wasn't defined as asexuality right away.
mm.
But basically, I was at my therapist appointment, who's wonderful, and this was probably the fifth therapist I had been to, and previously. All of the things I was going to therapy for were being addressed by checking my hormones. I had my hormones checked all the time, by checking my testosterone, checking all this stuff. And then through therapy, I was married at the time. Therapy with my wife. We went to couples therapy. We did this, and we did things like sensate focus, and we were just practicing all of this stuff to no avail. None of that helped me. All of that was aloe solutions to,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
to a problem that was not aloe. And so, once I got to this therapist, her words, once I we said everything, her words were basically, well, what if that is just who you are?
mm,
No other person in the parent, in the leader follower relationship, in all those therapist sessions,
mm, mm,
no one ever really said that to me.
mm,
And I feel like that is the feeling a lot of ace people questioning ace people are getting when they investigate groups. They're like, okay, so if I do this and I do this, would I be in your normal spectrum of asexuality?
mm,
And when they open that door and everybody in there is like, oh, there is no normal spectrum. Like,
mm.
it's just all spectrum. Just come on in and find yourself.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's very jarring at first, but I think that's also difficult
yeah.
because you are raised in that structure. We're all raised in a normalcy structure. We're raised in a normalcy structure in normativity. You're automatically othering things
Mm,
and people because they are not normal. Like by calling them not normal or by saying there is a not normal, whether you see people there or not, you're othering that. So everything in the allo structure was othering me. And so that when people come into asexuality and they see that that's, oh, wait a minute, I can wait, oh, there's a word for that, oh, we can, I can feel this way, it's normal to feel this way. or I don't have to fix anything about myself.
Mm,
No, you don't. I mean, it's all just one big spectrum. And like I say, I think that can only help the world. I feel like us aces are going to save society
yeah,
from itself.
yeah. Sure, sure, sure. No, 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 no. That is such an, such a positive, hopeful this thing. And like when we discussed earlier, and you said, and I had the, what do you say, sort of, I don't know whether I thought too much, but the courage also to say, because part of me was like, I'm saying queer joy, but I know there's less of it. But the question is, I think even thinking about that is sort of somewhere leading me to the joy rather than going on saying that, oh, there isn't joy and all that. And
Yeah.
I am not this person, or, and I'm sure, like, I mean, if people want to think they can, but uh, after 51 years and then being ace and struggling, I'm not at all sidelining or diminishing this absence of queer joy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And the exponential rise in phobia everywhere, transphobia and all kinds of queer phobia and everything,
Hmm.
and of course islamophobia and all that. But like I said, and you also, I think, largely said that for many people, I mean, queer people especially, open or not, old or young, or whichever, right? Uh, Living, navigating, existing, surviving on a day to day basis itself. And this is not just about jobs or education or health, but the whole thing. Oh, okay, this person is alive and okay, not like falling apart. I think people should realize is, and I'm sure queers know this largely, please, life is so extraordinarily difficult, and it's becoming even more difficult, right? Which is why queer joy is necessary, is joy, all the more perhaps. And this is not us, I think, asking selfishly. It is rather self and collective care which is making me put this. And I think, as a queer elder and a peer counselor, I think it's fair on my part also to say this, right? I
Oh
think,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and you said it perfectly. Things happen for you to find your queer joy. I mean, joy is something that can be lost and found.
Yeah.
So right now, there's not a big quantity of it sometimes, and understandably so, because it's hard to find joy in a world that doesn't think you should be there. I
Ah,
mean, how that is not very joyful.
not
But you don't have to find joy in that.
mm,
There are things like this conversation we're having right
mm,
now. I'm in Los Angeles, you're in India, and we are having this amazing conversation. There's so much
yeah,
joy in that.
yeah,
There's so much joy in the fact that we found each
yeah,
other. There's so much joy in in aceness itself.
sure,
There's so much joy that can still be found in transness, in people being comfortable finally with who they are. And people, that's another thing, people who fit a lot of the normative structures don't understand what it's like to actually find who they are,
mm,
because who they are is just automatically confirmed by society.
mm,
But for us, there's that joy of going, oh, this is who I am, and that's totally fine. And there are other people that accept me. But I think that's joy that we can experience ourselves, and that by us experiencing it, we can leave more joy for other
correct,
people to find.
correct, yeah,
So it's just important to it's important to be active with your government. It's important to be political. It's important to pay attention. Like I'm trying to keep into, like, I know that I think in June we'll finally get the decision for that Supreme Court discussion
mm,
yesterday. But it's important to keep a track and fight and be active for towards all of that. But it's also important to be joyful
correct,
uh that's going to be the fuel to doing all that other
Correct.
work. I mean, nobody wants to do that work if if you don't care. You know what I mean? If you're just downtrodden, you have to be joy. Joy can really help you. Happiness and joy can really help you do the work that needs to be done. And there's so much
Yes.
of it. So we just have to spread more of the queer joy. Help our fellow queer people, find that joy and fuel their activism, fuel their aid, fuel their care. That's what's gonna fuel it all. And I
Yeah.
think that and the nice thing is, I feel like we all have that capacity. I feel
Mm,
like because of our experiences, we've lived through all this stuff.
mm,
Like we're marginalized people.
right.
We already know what it's like for people not wanting us to exist.
Yes.
That's not new to us. We
Yeah.
already know how to deal with it.
Mm,
We just are going to have to deal with it more.
yeah.
That's the hard part.
Mm,
And, the joy will help us finding joy with ourselves and with our allies. That is what's going to fuel us in dealing with it, in fighting it, and eventually turning it around again
yeah.
and getting it moving in the right direction,
Yeah. Super.
and let's apply that to not just us. Let's
Mm,
apply that to the allonormative
mm,
people who are unhappy in their marriages, who are unhappy with their religion, who are unhappy with with their jobs. I bet you 100% that a lot of their trappings are normativity.
correct.
They're like, oh, well, I was told that, no, I should be this when I grow up. So I did that. I'm not that happy about it, but, I'm making good money and that's normativity. Like, you know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm,
So we, as marginalized people, and especially as ace
mm,
people and queer people,
mm.
we are experienced in battling normativity. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've got so much skill when it
Yes.
comes to that.
Yes. Yes. And kind of
You know?
internalized. And I don't think it ever ends for us, right? It just
No.
goes on in so many ways.
Yeah.
So it's been over an hour and a half. I know, very joyful talking to you amidst all the recalling. And I'm sure people here, at least the queer folks and other marginalized folks, will understand. Many times, when we are recalling, sometimes we are subconsciously reliving the trauma, but
Yeah.
that's not easy. But sharing is healing, connecting is joyful, and most importantly necessary. And I think this may be a lovely way to sort of end this
Yeah.
conversation here. Yeah. And definitely the conversations will continue in different ways. So, whoever has joined us today, thank you. And hopefully, whoever will further, many times up weeks later, people are watching and, listening, replaying captions, depending on whatever if you might have invisible disabilities like me, and yeah,
Mhm.
and everything. So please, take care of yourselves. We let us spread all kinds of joy, queer joy, ace joy, and everything else. Yeah, because joy, love, and all, they're so fundamental, taken for granted, and unfortunately, sort of being completely overshadowed by so much else. Yeah. And please DM us if you feel like, if you want to leave comments.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And then you can share this, right? Thank you again, and let's keep acing Instagram and live, and the world. Thank you so
Definitely.
so much, JJ.
Oh,
We will stay
thank you.
connected. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been such a memorable, such a moving, one conversation. This
Joyful.
one. Yeah, yeah. Oh, totally, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of joy out there.
yeah.
We'll spread it around and
Sure.
we'll
Yeah,
help other people
yeah,
find
yeah.
it.
And thank you, everybody. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Take care. Yeah, you too. All the best. Yeah. Bye bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. So I will close this and share it. Okay. Yeah.